Rain hammered against the cracked windshield of Daniel Carter's 20-year-old pickup truck as he pulled into the service entrance of the luxurious Blackridge estate. The mansion sat high above the city like a king watching over a kingdom of glass towers and endless lights. Daniel tightened his grip on the steering wheel for a second before shutting the engine off. He hated being late. But the morning had already turned against him. His landlord had called before sunrise demanding overdue rent. His daughter Sophie needed money for a school field trip he couldn't afford. And the restaurant where he worked nights had cut his hours again. Every bill in his apartment felt like another brick crushing his chest. Still, he forced himself out into the storm because when you're a single father, quitting is never an option. He rushed toward the estate's garage, carrying his rusted toolbox, while expensive sports cars gleamed beneath bright lights like museum pieces. Ferraris, Bentleys, Lamborghinis, machines worth more than everything Daniel had owned in his entire life combined. But tucked in the far corner under a dusty gray tarp sat something strange. It looked forgotten, hidden, almost abandoned. Daniel noticed the shape immediately. Long hood, wide curves, classic body lines. Even beneath decades of dust, he could tell it was special. Before he could step closer, a voice thundered behind him. "Don't touch that junk." Daniel turned and saw Victor Langston descending the staircase from the upper office. Billionaire investor, real estate king, one of the richest men in the country. His tailored charcoal suit looked untouched by the storm outside. Victor stared at the covered car with pure disgust. "That heap belonged to my father," he said coldly. "It's worthless. Been sitting there for years." Daniel nodded politely, but something about the billionaire's tone felt personal. Like he wasn't talking about a car at all. Victor tossed him a set of keys. "Fix the Bentley, ignore the trash." But as Daniel worked through the afternoon, he couldn't stop glancing at the mysterious vehicle in the corner. The dust wasn't ordinary. It was thick enough to suggest nobody had cared about the car in decades. Yet beneath the tarp, Daniel sensed history, stories, secrets. When he finally finished repairing the Bentley, he walked past the old car one more time. The tarp had slipped slightly near the front grille. Daniel froze, his heartbeat slowed. Hidden beneath the dirt was a symbol he recognized instantly from old magazines his father used to collect when Daniel was a kid. A symbol associated with one of the rarest cars ever built. Daniel barely slept that night. The image of the hidden emblem kept replaying in his mind like a broken film reel. Sophie sat at the tiny kitchen table eating cereal while he stared blankly at a cup of cold coffee. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked softly. Daniel forced a smile. "Yeah, kiddo. Just tired." But he wasn't tired. He was curious, obsessed. After dropping Sophie at school, he drove straight back to Blackridge Estate, under the excuse of checking the Bentley's engine calibration. The head butler allowed him inside without question. Victor Langston was away at meetings in Manhattan, leaving the massive garage eerily silent. Daniel approached the covered vehicle slowly this time. His pulse thudded harder with every step. He lifted the edge of the tarp carefully, and the dust exploded into the air like smoke from a forgotten grave. What appeared beneath it stole the breath from his lungs. The car was a 1963 Aurelio V12 prototype, a machine so rare most collectors believed only two existed. Daniel had read about it years ago in automotive magazines. Built by an Italian designer who disappeared mysteriously before production ever began. Rumors claimed one of the prototypes vanished after a private collector bought it in secret during the 1970s. Experts estimated that if the missing prototype were ever found, it could be worth millions. Daniel stepped backward in disbelief. "No way," he whispered. The paint was faded, the tires dead, and corrosion scarred parts of the body. But the framework remained intact. More importantly, the serial plate was still attached beneath the dashboard. This wasn't a replica. This was real. Daniel's hands trembled. He thought about Sophie's unpaid school fees, the eviction notice hidden in his jacket pocket, the endless cycle of surviving instead of living. For a dangerous moment, temptation whispered through his mind. He could stay quiet, tell nobody, maybe somehow negotiate ownership later. But then another voice answered immediately, the voice his late wife used to admire in him. Honesty matters when nobody's watching. Daniel pulled the tarp back into place and stepped away. Just then, Victor Langston entered the garage unexpectedly. "You're still here?" the billionaire snapped. Daniel hesitated. "Mr. Langston, do you know what that car actually is?" Victor rolled his eyes with visible irritation. "A burden." My father wasted millions collecting garbage. Daniel swallowed carefully. Sir, I think it may be worth a lot more than you realize. Victor laughed, not kindly, but cruelly. You mechanics always think you've discovered treasure in scrap metal. He walked over, yanked the tarp off completely, and kicked the tire hard. This thing ruined my childhood. My father cared more about cars than family. His voice darkened. Worthless. Then he looked directly at Daniel. If you want it so badly, take it. Save me the trouble of paying to scrap it. Daniel stared in shock. You mean you're giving it away? Victor smirked bitterly. If you can haul that corpse out of here by tonight, it's yours. Daniel stood frozen long after Victor left the garage. The billionaire's words echoed through his head repeatedly. It's yours. It felt impossible. People like Daniel didn't suddenly stumble into miracles. Life had taught him that every blessing usually carried hidden consequences, yet the paperwork Victor's assistant handed him an hour later was real. Ownership transfer documents signed. Legal, final. Daniel could barely afford groceries, and now he technically owned one of the rarest cars in automotive history. But owning it and restoring it were two completely different things. The Aurelio looked beautiful beneath the grime. But it hadn't run in decades. Towing alone would cost money Daniel didn't have. Still, he refused to let the opportunity slip away. By evening, he borrowed an old trailer from his friend Marcus, a retired mechanic who nearly fainted after seeing the car. Danny, do you realize what this might be? Marcus whispered while circling the vehicle in disbelief. Maybe, Daniel answered quietly, or maybe it's just an old dream. Together, they hauled the car through pouring rain toward Marcus's tiny repair garage on the edge of town. Sophie waited there after school, bundled in an oversized hoodie while doing homework beside the office heater. Her eyes widened the second she saw the Aurelio. Dad, that car looks like it belongs in a movie. Daniel laughed for the first time in weeks. Yeah, maybe it does, over the next several hours. The three of them carefully cleaned years of dirt from the bodywork. With every wiped surface, the car revealed more hidden elegance. Deep midnight blue paint shimmered beneath the dust. Handcrafted leather seats remained surprisingly preserved. And when Marcus inspected the engine serials, his expression turned serious. Daniel, this isn't just rare, he lowered his voice. This may be the missing prototype collectors have searched for orders. Sophie looked between them excitedly. Does that mean it's valuable? Marcus exhaled slowly. Kiddo, if authenticated, this car could change your lives forever. Silence filled the garage. Daniel looked at his daughter, noticing the hope flickering in her eyes. It scared him. Hope can be dangerous when you've spent years disappointed by life. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, he said gently, but that night, after Sophie fell asleep on the office couch, Marcus handed Daniel an old magazine article featuring the Aurelio V12 prototype. The article mentioned rumors that the missing model once belonged to billionaire collector Edward Langston, Victor's father. Daniel's stomach tightened. Suddenly, Victor's hatred made sense. The car wasn't worthless to him because of money. It carried memories he wanted buried forever. Daniel leaned back in silence while rain tapped against the garage roof. Somewhere deep inside, he felt destiny shifting. The next morning, word about the mysterious Aurelio spread faster than Daniel expected. Marcus had contacted a restoration specialist in Chicago for advice. And by noon, automotive bloggers were already posting blurry photos online. Most people called it fake. Some claimed it was impossible. Others said if authentic, the car could become one of the greatest barn finds in history. Daniel ignored the internet chaos and focused on fixing the basics: battery system, fuel lines, engine inspection. Sophie stayed beside him after school, handing over tools with proud seriousness. I'm your assistant mechanic now, she declared. Daniel smiled every time she said it, because he hadn't seen her this happy since her mother passed away 3 years earlier. Late that evening, while Marcus adjusted wiring beneath the hood, Daniel turned the ignition key carefully. Nothing happened at first except a weak click, then suddenly the engine coughed violently. Smoke burst from the exhaust pipes. Marcus shouted again. Daniel tried once more. The Aurelio roared alive with a thunderous growl that shook the garage walls. Sophie screamed with excitement. Daniel stared forward in disbelief as the dashboard lights flickered awake after decades of darkness. It felt less like starting a car and more like waking a sleeping beast from another era. But their celebration didn't last long. Headlights appeared outside the garage. 3 black SUVs rolled into the parking lot. Expensive, tinted windows. Intimidating. Marcus frowned immediately. That can't be good. The doors opened, and several men in suits stepped out. In the center was Victor Langston himself. His expression had completely changed from arrogance to alarm. He walked straight toward the running Aurelio as if seeing a ghost. "You got it working?" he asked quietly. Daniel shut off the engine slowly.